What's going down? What's happening? Welcome to Riot Starter TV. It's always a beautiful thing. I want to invite you all. First and foremost, my name is Kalonji Changa. I represent the FTP movement. That is my organization. And I want to start off because in tradition, I want to say to you that our program, if it's your first time coming on, I want to tell you that, first give you a welcome because you could have been anywhere in the world, but you're on Black Power Media tonight. And my platform, of course, is Riot Starter TV. And again, I said I represent the FTP movement. One of the programs that we have right now is a program in which we are pushing to make sure our OGs and veterans are in good standing and they have proper housing, so on and so forth. So one of the programs that we're pushing right now is called Liberation Housing. And you can find out about Liberation Housing by going to thenaturalfestival.com/liberation housing, thenaturalfestival.com/liberation housing. Now, tonight, we have a very important convo, one that is often had across Black America. It's often had across the diaspora. And it's in regards to our shining Black prince, known as El Hajj Malik Shabazz, affectionately known as Malcom X, who was assassinated 57 years ago on February 21st of 1965. Recently, for those of you who follow our channel, you know that I've had a couple different interviews with a few folks, and they've made different claims. The first interview I did was with some Malcolm scholars, which would by name would be Paul Lee and Peter Goldman. And then most recently, in the last couple of weeks, I had an interview with Baba Zak Kondo. And in these interviews, in asking who assassinated Malcolm, the Nation of Islam's name has come up. Now, how did we get here? I have a nephew, and shout out to him, my nephew Alonzo, who is a member of the Nation of Islam. And he had hit me up maybe about a few days ago. And he said to me, Uncle, have you seen the piece that Dr. Wesley Muhammad put up about the interview with you and Baba Zak Kondo? And I said, I didn't. He said there was something that he saw that J Electronica reposted, and that he had spoken to Dr. Wesley Muhammad because he knows Dr. Wesley Muhammad. I don't know what the nature of their relationships is, but apparently, they have phone numbers and so on and so forth. So he said he asked Dr. Wesley if he was able to, if he spoke to me, would he be willing to come on to the platform and speak his side in regards to the Nation of Islam and whatever role they did or didn't have. So Dr. Wesley Muhammad and I spoke, and he agreed to come on today. And, we're grateful for him to come on because, one of the things he said to me is oftentimes folks speak about the nation, but they don't speak to the nation. So tonight we're going to speak to the nation, and we want to welcome to our platform, Dr. Wesley Muhammad. Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Wesley. What's happening?
Wa alaikum salam, Brother Kalonji. I am well, and I pray you are also.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Well, I want to first welcome you to our platform, and say that we appreciate you coming on to speak on this matter because of the fact that we know that it is one of the most touchiest topics when it comes to, the masses and the Nation of Islam. There's often been talks about, who did what and who didn't, and so on and so forth. And for you to agree to come on, we appreciate you making that happen. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Brother Kalonji, for inviting me as a representative of the Nation of Islam, or any representative of the Nation of Islam whom you might have invited. I am grateful.
Right on.
As you alluded, 57 years ago, Malcom X was gunned down in New York. That particular murder inflicted a wound in the body politic of Black America that has not yet healed. Over the decades, there has been much conversation, and of course, understandably so, the Nation of Islam is frequently center stage, for better or for worse, of that conversation, but rarely is the Nation of Islam a part of that conversation. Not that the nation has been silent on the matter. Our voice on the matter has been out there, in particular, the Honorable Brother Minister Farrakhan, whose perspective is more valuable than anybody out there speaking on Malcolm, who's alive today. I would say no question. But our voice has often been marginalized from the conversation. We have not been invited to offer our perspective on the matter of Brother Malcom X, the man, or the murder. So I am thankful to you, Brother Kalonji, and all who helped to rectify that error by allowing us on your platform to participate in this conversation.
Without a doubt. And again, we want to let the record reflect that after tonight, you won't even have to say that no one has invited you, because you can say that the Riot Started TV has definitely invited you, and we dug into it and we skinned it to see what was in it. For the record, because I come from a structured organization, and one of the things we like is clarity in regards to our role in as far as organizationally. So for the record, you sit on the Executive Council of the Nation of Islam. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And explain Executive Council so that folks who are listening can be clear and they know that you're not just a rank and file member that we just snatched up on the corner and said, come talk about the nation, because we want to make sure that what it is being said is properly represented and by someone who is authorized to speak on it. So please tell us what the Executive Council is.
In any rank and file of the Nation of Islam, as the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad said, technically is a minister. So we pride ourselves on our rank and file being able to address such matters. However, it is the case that as a member of the Executive Council of the Nation of Islam, which is the governing body of the Nation of Islam under the divine direction and guidance of the Honorable Brother Minister Farrakhan, who instituted the council, I am a part of what in this Malcom X conversation has become infamous, right? The Chicago national official. I am a Chicago national official by Allah's grace. I'm also an academic. My training, bachelor's, master's, and doctorate in Islamic studies. I have taught African American religion. I have taught African American Islam. I have taught courses on Malcom X in various Division 1A institutions, universities in this country. So I personally come to this conversation from both angles, as an insider and as an outsider, as an academic. an insider as a Chicago national official, and as an academic as well. And both of the places where I sit, there is no conflict in them. The outsider, insider perspective that I bring to the conversation, I believe adds to the weight of our contribution to the conversation.
Okay.
In other words, me being a Chicago national official isn't a demerit in terms of this conversation, as some would like to suppose. Me being a Chicago national official privileges me, I would say, in certain respects with regard to this conversation.
Okay. So right on. So I appreciate the clarity, because it's always necessary to have clarity. So getting started, we're gonna jump right into the meat of things that they say. I know that, you know, in the post that you put up, you pretty much you definitely didn't agree with with what folks like Baba Zak was saying in regards to the nation's involvement, and others, not just Baba Zak, you know. So I wanted to know, what is it that you don't agree with, and, you know, let's rap about it. Tell me about, you know, what's the false narrative that we're talking about.
And you interjected the proper language into this conversation. False narrative. We have been deconstructing the Malcom X false narrative. Let me be clear what I mean by that. The autobiography of Malcom X, whatever its literary flaws may be, that Manny Marble or others may highlight, the autobiography of Malcom X is a transformative work. It's one of the most important texts of the 21st century. It is, I believe, almost top of the list in terms of books of value for Black people. It is a great source for our getting intimate with the mind, the experience, the walk of Malcom X. So when I say the Malcom X false narrative, I'm not talking about the autobiography of Malcom X. The autobiography is so powerful and so transformational, and has touched to one degree or another most Black people since its publication. The transformative value of the autobiography, I believe, the enemies of Malcolm sought to neutralize the transformative value of the autobiography of Malcom X. And their method of neutralizing the autobiography was erecting a false narrative of Malcom X. And many of most, I would say, of the Malcom X scholars are party to the construction of the false narrative, many of them innocently so. But the false narrative smothers the power in many ways of the autobiography. For example, even though along Malcolm's journey in his autobiography, at a certain point, his divorce, if you will, from the Nation of Islam, we read it, we follow that trajectory with him. when he's angry at the Nation of Islam and its teacher, the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad. As a reader of that text, we experienced that with him, and the emotional roller coaster that he experienced, we experienced it with him. But by the time we get to the epilogue, right, of Alex Hagan, and we read from Malcom X via Alex Hagan that Malcom X himself, despite his proclamations on Monday, February 15th, after his house was bombed that Sunday, that Monday he proclaimed that the Nation of Islam bombed my house upon the orders of Elijah Muhammad. He was angry, understandably so. He made those proclamations on Monday, but by Sunday, he had totally backtracked from that, had a different understanding of what happened to his house and what was happening to him, and he expressed his new thoughts to several persons. And so we read at the close of the autobiography, Malcom X saying, I'm going to stop saying it's the Nation of Islam out to kill me. I know what they can do. The things that are happening to me now since France has made me to see it's bigger than the Nation of Islam. I am going to stop saying it's the Nation of Islam. So at the close of the autobiography, that great text, we hear Malcolm giving the true narrative. It's not the nation who's gunning for me, and it was not. Certainly not organizationally. But once we leave the autobiography and then go to the scholarship now, the scholarship, much of which has an axe to grind with the Nation of Islam. It's in that scholarship that we get the narrative that the Nation of Islam killed Malcolm upon the orders of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. That's the false narrative. And that particular false narrative does violence to the text itself. And so we are determined to continue deconstructing that false narrative that imprisons Malcolm's legacy. It does not help Malcolm's legacy. It imprisons Malcolm's legacy.
Okay, so what do you say? Because I have a couple questions from the statement you just made. One, we know that Talmadge Hayer contended that he and his comrades were loyal members of the Newark Mosque, and that they killed Malcolm on the orders of higher ups in the nation. What do you say to that?
There's a lot.
You're saying Talmadge was lying, or?
So, when you say was Talmadge lying, the question has to be asked, which Talmadge? And are you really asking about Talmadge Hayer, or are you asking about Thomas Hagan? Let's back up.
They're the same person, correct?
No. I will unpack that. Talmadge Hayer, there is an evolution of his testimony. And so it is advisable that we take the body of Talmadge Hayer's confessions into account. It is not the case that the affidavits, 1977, 1978 affidavits produced by Thomas Hagan versus the under the oath testimony given in 1966 by Talmadge Hayer. Very important. Talmadge Hayer admitted in court under oath that there was never a Thomas Hagan. He was never known by that name. That was never a nickname. How did he get the name Thomas Hagan? After he was caught by the crowd after shooting Malcom X. He had a bullet in his leg and he was at the hospital. The police, instead of giving him treatment, the police were questioning him, insisting that he answer their questions first before they give him his wound any care. In that situation, they asked him his name. He said Talmadge Hayer. The officer misheard him and said Thomas Hagan. And Talmadge Hayer said because he's in pain, he wants care. He just said, yeah, whatever. Under oath during the 1966 trial, when he first confesses to the crime, and he gives a lot of detail about the circumstances, Talmadge Hayer, of the crime, he gave details, important details that have not been made a part of the Malcom X scholarly narrative. But under oath, he gave great information. Now, 1977, 1978, the affidavits. But it's important that, well, we'll stay with the affidavits for a moment. The affidavit.
Real quick, because you lost me somewhere, and I'm trying to come back. So you saying that Thomas Hagan didn't exist? It didn't exist.
That is correct.
You're saying that Talmadge Hayer did exist,
right?
And Talmadge Hayer, right?
Thomas Hagan was a mistake in hearing on the part of the arresting officer.
Right. I got that. I didn't ask you about Thomas Hagan, though. I'm talking about Talmadge Hayer. So if Thomas, I'm cool with that, but I'm saying that he said,
right now, but this is what I'm getting to. You are asking about Thomas Hagan because you're quoting Thomas Hagan. I'm going to unpack that. See, this is the problem. The false narrative oversimplifies very important matters. And in order to shine light on what really went down, the complexity of situations have to be put on the table. So why is the distinction between Talmadge Hayer, the real person, and Thomas Hagan, the mistake? Why is that important? Because the affidavits, 1977, 1978 affidavits, were issued in the name of Thomas Hagan, which there is no social security number issued to any Thomas Hagan. That was a false identity that he himself admitted. So this legal document is not legal. And so there is an asterisk there. But what's important is the evolution of Talmadge Hayer's confessions that began in February, March 1966 and evolved well beyond 1977, 1978. He sat down with Gil Noble. He spoke to Tony Brown. He gave multiple interviews and said multiple things. So there's an evolution to his confession. This is why I push back when you say, well, he said, well, at what point did he say? Because in the affidavit, Thomas Hagan said he names partially 4 of his accomplices, and he identifies himself as a believer in the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, who was inflamed by what Malcolm was saying. However, that's only part of his confession.
So was Talmadge Hayer a member of the Nation of Islam?
He was, but he was
Okay.
Not active. He was put out of the mosque. And
Okay.
it's important.
But what year was he put out the mosque?
And at the time, he was on F time by June, when he was first approached, June 1964. He was on F time, as was also who was not active in the mosque. The most important man for the narrative, and it's true, William 25X Bradley. So both of these men were not active members of the Nation of Islam at the time they committed these crimes. And this is very, very important, because the narrative wants to attribute the actions of these individuals to the culpability of the organization. And God is in the details. Talmadge Hayer was not an active member. He was put out of the Nation of Islam at the time.
He's a member, but he wasn't an active member, is what you're saying to me.
Would you say?
He's a member, but he wasn't an active member at the time, is what you're saying.
And by active, I don't mean he was just not coming out because he just wasn't coming out. No. He was put out because of a violation of our law.
Okay. So when he stated that that the orders came from NOI officials, then he was lying.
He never stated that.
He never said.
He said, and we have all of his quotes on the map.
Okay.
Talmadge Hayer always said he doesn't know who gave the order. And he said specifically, he's very doubtful that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad ever gave the order. He said he doesn't know who gave the order. He never attributed the order to Chicago or national officials.
But he agreed that he participated. He said that he actually committed the crime.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, he was caught red-handed.
Okay. According to Les Payne, he said the Philadelphia Minister Jeremiah Shabazz said that Honorable Elijah Muhammad had ordered assassination. Is this true? Or
no. See, so Les Payne, and we have his text. We study his text, Les and Tamara Payne. That is an illustration of what I describe as the lack of rigor that has become commonplace in Malcom X scholarship. Scholars are able to get away with things in Malcom X scholarship that in other disciplines would be unacceptable. Les Payne claims, and the book was published, and
checking out Riot Starter TV.
Book was published in 2020. This is important because I'm talking about that deathbed confession. Les Payne's book was published in 2020. In here, Les Payne claims that both Yusuf Shaw in a deathbed confession and Minister Jeremiah Shabazz in a deathbed confession by the phone confessed all of these crimes. We don't have, and they died in, Jeremiah Shabazz died in 98. Captain Yusuf Shaw died somewhere around the same time. It's not till 2020 we hear about these alleged deathbed confessions. Now, because Les Payne spun this fictitious narrative about Talib, who supposedly gave him an account of what happened after the assassination, when William Bradley allegedly went back to Mosque 25 and was debriefed by officials, he presents this story from a pseudonymous person, a person whose name he would not give us. When the district attorney tried to verify the information that Les Payne gave, he was totally unable to do so. So his credibility is already on that account suspect. So we need Tamara Payne to produce the recording of Jeremiah Shabazz and Yusef Shaw on their deathbed in the 90s, telling you when Yusef Shaw, for example, multiple times was asked and answered, he doesn't know who did the bombing. We got him on record. If you have him on record, Sister Tamara Payne, Payne was a journalist, not a historian. And he prided himself on that because of the methodologies that journalists use versus historians. So before I will accept from Les Payne that Jeremiah Shabazz on his deathbed in 98 and Yusef Shaw on his deathbed, they both happen to tell this one man, give him these deathbed confessions, we need to see the documentation. I'm sure you recorded these deathbed confessions because you have allegedly so many other interviews from witnesses recorded. We need to hear those deathbed confessions claimed by Les Payne, and we need Tamara Payne to help the district attorney of New York or the current investigators identify this pseudonymous person, Talib, who allegedly gave Les Payne this blow-by-blow about what happened at March 25 after the assassination. The district attorney wanted to verify that claim and was unable to. So we need verification of what's in here before we just accept it at face value. No.
Okay. So, and I appreciate you responding to that question. And again, you know, we are looking for clarity, and you know, hopefully we can get to some of that clarity. I want to talk about. I want to know what would your response be to John Ali, the Nation of Islam National Secretary, when he declared on WVON's radio station out of Chicago in June '64 that the NOI was seeking Malcolm's death. Is that what was that about?
Well, a couple of things.
And while you at it, I also want to, since you're addressing that, also the June '64 when Elijah Muhammad Jr. told an FOI gathering that they should cut out Malcolm's tongue and put it in an envelope and give it to him, and he would seal it and give it to the messenger, stamped and approved. So I would like you to address those things as well, if you don't mind.
I'm very happy to address both. One, John Ali, the person, but first, John Ali, the statement. I can't say all, many Malcom X scholars have tried to unearth that tape and have been totally unable to do so. Of all of the Malcom X archives that have been collected, no one has been able to find that VON tape. A radio show here in Chicago who have archives, but no one has been able to produce that specific conversation where John Ali allegedly said the Muslims indeed were trying to kill Malcolm X. Now, secondly, John Ali, irrespective of what turns out to be the case with that particular VON conversation. Did John Ali beat the drums of war against Malcom X? Absolutely, he did. Khalil Islam, formerly Thomas 15X Johnson, tells us specifically, and this is more authenticated than this VON tape that never surfaced, though many have looked for it. But Thomas 15X Johnson tells us of the meeting that he and other lieutenants had with John Ali. When John Ali came from Chicago to New York, brought about 5 officers together at the Muhammad Speaks office and tried to sell them on the need to murder Malcom X. I believe that happened. I don't have any reason to doubt the testimony of Thomas 15X Jackson, but this Johnson. But this is what's important. Johnson, brother Khalil Islam, said even though all of the lieutenants there did hate Malcolm and thought Malcolm was worthy of death, John Ali's sale was totally unsuccessful. Thomas 15X Johnson says after John Ali came to New York, beating the drums of war against Malcolm, the higher order came down from the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad. See, the false narrative is false because it picks and chooses. It amputates the story. It gives only half of the story. John Ali did beat the drums of war. He tried to get or recruit killers of Malcolm in New York. After he left New York and went back to Chicago, the order came down from the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, leave Malcolm alone, totally undoing what John Ali tried to do. This is what Thomas 15X Johnson or Khalil Islam testified to. So John Ali, the FBI asset, John Ali, whose work with the intelligence community is beyond the FBI, but also the Department of the Army, also the U.S. Navy.
This is the former
National Secretary.
Okay. Was it known
that, by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad in 1970?
Was it known? Was this known that he worked with? When did it become known that he was a federal operative?
Well, of course, Louis Lomax in 1964, in his book When the Word is Given, published John Ali's affiliation with the FBI. But I believe that those on the inside, in particular, Malcom X, knew of John Ali's and others in the nation, but in particular, Malcom X knew of John Ali's affiliation because James 67X Warden, or James Shabazz, tells us that Malcolm said John Ali wasn't an agent in the sense, but he was an asset because John Ali did not get FBI training at the Quantico Academy, which would have made him an actual agent. But Malcolm said John Ali got training by the FBI, but in a context other than Quantico. I have the FBI document that documents that in 1952, John Simmons at the time went to the FBI office in Philadelphia, applying to be a SAC, a special agent in charge. He was shuttled to Washington, D.C., where he was interviewed by J. Edgar Hoover himself.
And this is John Ali speaking of.
This is John Ali, who was, his slave name was John Simmons at the time. John Simmons applied in 1952 to be a special agent in charge in the Philadelphia office. He was shuttled to Washington, D.C. to be interviewed and was interviewed by J. Edgar Hoover himself. J. Edgar Hoover did not hire him as an agent. The first official Black agent who was given the Quantico Academy training was Aubrey Lewis, who would later be very important in this story. Aubrey Lewis in 1962 was the first Black FBI agent to go through the normal protocols of Quantico Academy training. John Ali was trained by the FBI, but not officially through Quantico. John Ali, as John Simmons, also was an inspector for the Department of the Army. John Simmons was a signals corps, a signal man for the Signals Corps, a division of the Army that deals with intelligence. We got him confessing that. And lastly, John Simmons was a track man for the U.S. Navy. John Ali had associations. He was in the employ of the U.S. government in civic service, military service, and intelligence service. So he is one of the three top level assets. Top level is the FBI code for top level assets that they had and admitted to having in the Nation of Islam.
So with that being said, would he be considered an enemy of the Nation of Islam and an enemy of the people? Because where I'm from, we don't rock with folks that we know to be factually working with or around the state, because of the fact that it's a contradiction. We know that the FBI has a history and a track record of trying to shut down and murder, lock up, so on and so forth. Any African or anyone that goes against imperialism, colonialism, etc. So, I mean, would you all consider him an enemy, or would he just, was he misunderstood? I mean, what's the deal? Because I saw some pictures, and I'm asking this because of the fact that I saw some pictures of him at Savior's Day in 2015, and I was kind of confused as to how would this man, after we know, based on what you're saying right now, we know his history with law enforcement, military, so on and so forth. So I just needed to know, because the people want to know. What do you feel?
So a couple of things. One, we have to resist imposing a narrative on a picture we see. We see a picture, for example, what is often done, we see a picture of the Honorable Brother Minister Farrakhan taking a picture with somebody. And we impose a narrative on that picture. He's just taking a picture with him. But the larger question of John Ali, did John Ali's known prior association with government agencies, did that disqualify him at the time from being helpful to the Nation of Islam? No, not in principle, because the Nation of Islam is we do things a little differently than most Black organizations. The Nation of Islam by design is for, we call the worst of Black people. By worst of Black people, I mean Black people who have suffered the worst by our enemies. So all Black people are invited, are beckoned by this call. No former crime that you committed, no former engagement or association bars you from, or me, from the salvific power of the message of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad. So anyone can come. Now, if you come and we find that you are still doing Satan's bidding instead of God's bidding, then another conversation will be had. And that's why the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad dismissed John Ali from his post in 1970 when he became convinced that John Ali was in someone else's service rather than the service or the good of Black people or the Nation of Islam. Now, does that bar John Ali from attending Savior's Day? Absolutely not. Because he attended Savior's Day, as thousands attend Savior's Day, and not all of those who attend for noble reasons, but all are welcome.
Okay. Moving along, you said that Elijah Muhammad told folks to stand down, that it wouldn't be, that no one should touch Malcolm, correct? Pretty much?
That is correct.
Okay. And I'd asked you a question in regards to what you were saying in regards to Elijah Muhammad Jr., talking about cutting out Malcolm's tongue and putting in another sin and all that. Yes, so let's hear about that.
Let's talk about that. That occurred June 28, 1964, prior to the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad speaking at the Armory there in New York. At the FOI class, the Assistant Supreme Captain Elijah Muhammad Jr. did say, the nigga don't want to give up the house. Well, all you got to do is go to the house and clap on the walls until they come tumbling down. And then cut his tongue out, send it to me. This is Elijah Jr. talking. Send it to me. I will give it to my father and have it stamped approved. That's what was said by Elijah Muhammad Jr. reportedly at that gathering prior to the Honorable Elijah Muhammad addressing the crowd at the Armory. Now, what's the context of that? Because context is everything. There's an immediate context and a larger context. The immediate context is Elijah Muhammad Jr. and the fruit were already incensed, was turned up for two reasons or over two incidents. That morning, a call was received purportedly from one of Malcolm's people. And the call said that plans are made to kill Elijah so that he does not address the Armory. Before that, a call came in saying that when Elijah Muhammad arrives at Kennedy Airport, we're gonna kill him. Now,
who is this from?
When you say who?
Yeah, I'm saying who did you say these this
persons purporting to be followers of Malcom X. Now, this wasn't dismissed because there's so much talk in a false narrative about altercations between the Fruit and Malcolm. But those aren't put in the proper context. Those altercations were always unarmed Fruit and heavily armed Malcolm followers. Always. And so when the threats came, yes, the brothers prepared to receive the Honorable Elijah Muhammad into their city were absolutely on red alert. And so that statement was made, but again, it was after that the edict came down from the Honorable Elijah Muhammad undercutting or disabusing the Muslims of any such talk. It was after the June 28th statement by Elijah Jr., after John Ali's beating the drums of war. These two were beating the drums of war against Malcolm. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad explicitly stepped in and said, leave Malcolm alone. And so what happens? Because of the order, the Muslims absolutely followed the order. These cases, Boston, Los Angeles, these so-called attempts to assassinate Malcolm X, none of them were that. Followers of Malcolm were beat up. They were touched because the instruction was from the captains, Malcolm can't be touched because that came from on high. But his followers, yeah, because the first altercation between Malcolm's armed followers and unarmed FOI, the first altercation didn't come from us. We were not the aggressors. The first altercation was March 23rd, March 23rd, 1964. A few days or 2 weeks after Malcolm X left the nation and formed the so-called rifle clubs, his immediate followers, they came to Temple number 7, 6 of them, muscling up on the officials of Temple number 7. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad gave instructions for the officials to call the police and tell the police that if they don't stop Malcolm and his men from interfering with our operations, our men will make sure he stops. So there were skirmishes between armed Malcolm followers and unarmed FOI. So yes, there was leeway in terms of the men around Malcolm, in terms of touching them as they were, in many cases, trying to muscle up on us. But all of that was in the context of we can't touch Malcolm.
Right. So let me ask you this, because we have a few more questions. I know we moving along, and I appreciate your answers. Now Malcolm was he put together Muhammad Speaks, the newspaper? Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so he did it kind of,
I understand.
Okay, as a tribute to Elijah Muhammad. And I know that you said that it was stated that Honorable Elijah Muhammad said not to touch Malcolm, right? Mm-hmm. I'm wondering, there was the picture in Muhammad Speaks with Malcolm's head bouncing down the street. Mm-hmm. Was that sanctioned? I mean, what was the situation with that?
Oh, absolutely. Because of the proscription, because the Muslims were very angry at Malcolm, rightly so. The anger, the intense anger, began in June. All of March, Malcolm X was going out of his way to make clear his love and continued faith in the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad. Malcolm's discovery that his teacher had taken on 9 wives did not crush his faith. That's part of the false narrative. He knew about the wives of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad for over a year before he announced his departure from the nation March 8th. And when he announced, in that whole month, he went out of his way to let it be known he still is a follower of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad. There was no acrimony from us towards Malcolm. The aggression in March came from Malcolm and his followers toward the nation. The Amsterdam News article of March 21st, where Malcolm called Captain Joseph and Assistant Minister Henry chief hypocrites. Well, we had not launched any public salvos at Malcolm at that time. The first salvo in the press was Malcolm's words to the Amsterdam News, identifying Captain Joseph and Minister Henry as envious of him and chief hypocrites. And then 2 days later, 6 of Malcolm's men come to temple number 7, muscling up on temple number 7. So those were the opening salvos, if you will. That didn't come from us. Malcolm goes to Africa, in the Middle East, April, May. Things were relatively quiet. Malcolm's long, hot summer began in June because Malcolm, from our perspective, in any objective perspective, did engage in ignoble activity. It was in June that Malcolm started scandalizing the Honorable Elijah Muhammad in the press unfairly.
You're saying June of 64?
June of 64.
Okay, and you said
this is when things got hot.
Right, but you said that he was the first to go to the press, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, but
he didn't go to the press in March,
right?
Scandalizing the Honorable Elijah Muhammad,
right? But when did if you don't mind me saying such, Agent John Ali or Operative John Ali, when did he? Because he was the first person to make the announcement that Malcolm was under suspension. Is that correct?
He did not put Malcolm under suspension. I don't know.
No. He made the public announcement, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, he probably did. Yes.
Okay, but this was prior to 64. This was what?
The suspension was December 3rd, 1963.
Okay, all right. I'm just trying to get
December 3rd, 1963. Malcolm X was put on suspension for disobeying direct instructions from the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad.
Okay, so a year and a day.
December 63.
You said what? December 63?
That's December 63.
Okay, December 3rd, 63. Mm-hmm. Okay, so 1 year later, in the Muhammad Speaks, the minister was known as Louis X at that particular moment, right? Mm-hmm. In the Muhammad Speaks on December 4th, a year and a day later, he's quoted as saying, "The die is set and Malcolm shall not escape, especially after such evil, foolish talk. Such a man as Malcolm is worthy of death."
Why did you stop there? Why did you stop the quote there?
That's the only piece I have right now.
That's part of the trick of the false narrative.
Okay. Well, I'm not trying to give a false narrative.
It's not you. It's not you.
Okay.
Whoever provided that quote is invested in twisting
Okay, this is from a book. Actually, that particular book is from a cat who I don't necessarily rock with, but it was on page 398 of Manning Marable's book.
Yeah.
So
and all of the press do the same thing. I knew where you were going to stop.
Yeah, I mean,
because the false narrative has to stop where you stopped in your reading.
Well, if you can finish it, because of the fact that I don't have the other joint. So for the record, let the record reflect. I'm not providing the false narrative, and that's not my intention.
And I don't mean to suggest that you are.
Okay. I just want to clarify.
I'm not at all.
And for the record, let me just say this right here, real quick. I am not. I am a supporter of Malcom X. Period. I'm not. Whatever Baba Zak Kondo has to say, whatever Dr. Wesley Muhammad has to say, that's irrelevant. I want to know the truth. And the folks that we rock with want to know the truth. So I want to be clear with that. I don't have a vested interest.
I'm very clear, and I appreciate that.
I don't have a vested interest in dissing the nation. I have close to 2,000 family members in the Nation of Islam who are registered and active right now. But go ahead, I'm sorry.
I absolutely appreciate your energy and your vibe. I do not at all mean to suggest that you are a party to the false narrative. That particular quote you were just reading, the author or the provider of that quote, and it could have been anyone because it's always presented that way. And it cuts it off at a very particular point. The actual quote continues. The Honorable Brother Minister Farrakhan, Minister Louis X at the time, said, such a man as Malcolm is worthy of death and would have met death if not for the Honorable Elijah Muhammad's faith in Allah. So yeah, he was worthy of death, but if it wasn't for the Honorable Elijah Muhammad having faith in Allah, that Allah is going to handle it, which is why he told us to leave Malcolm alone, Malcolm would have met death. He would not have lasted a year out, but he did, because we could not seek death for Malcolm. The only thing we could do is express our anger, which was very justified. Our anger was very warranted at our brother at that time. It wasn't because he left the nation. It was because of his activity, ignoble activity in the month of June in particular. That's where the fires started.
And what was that ignoble activity? So for the record, for clarity.
Say that again.
What was the ignoble activity you speaking of?
It was in June, around June 6th, where the Rubicon River was crossed. Because Malcolm was up against the eviction from his home, which was the property of the Nation of Islam. The trial was imminent. It was coming up June 14th, 15th, or 15th, 16th. Malcolm felt desperate, and he tried a new tactic in June that he had not done before, trying to stand the nation down. He went to the white press, very actively sought out the press to tell them his story about the little secretaries, which was always a false narrative. He went on a tour scandalizing his teacher in the press. Now, a snapshot. So why do we say scandalizing?
Right. You said the little secretaries, these are the wives that you referred to.
Right. They were wives, but he presented them in the press erroneously as little secretaries. I'll give you an example. During the trial, June 15, June 16 trial, eviction trial. Malcom X, under oath, says the Honorable Elijah Muhammad took 9 wives. That wasn't the first time nor the last time he used the right language, because he understood the Honorable Elijah Muhammad's domestic life. He understood it well. In court, Malcolm says, under oath, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad took 9 wives. When he leaves court, he's standing with his men around him, and the press have a microphone in his face. He says, what they don't want me to tell is that Elijah Muhammad has sex with his teenage secretaries. See, under oath, he used the right language. But in the public, in the press, he used scandalizing language. And so that inflamed the followers of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. We did feel that such action against your benefactor was worthy of death, but none of us could move on our feelings. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad told us to leave Malcolm alone, because the Honorable Elijah Muhammad privately and publicly, we know privately because FBI bugged the palace and the phone. So we know a lot of the conversation that took place privately. The messenger publicly and privately said, leave Malcolm alone. Allah will take care of Malcolm. And the Honorable Elijah Muhammad's vision of Allah taking care of Malcolm was bringing Malcolm back to the Nation of Islam alive on his knees. The messenger made it clear that that was his vision for the resolution of the Malcolm X matter. Not a dead, martyred Malcolm X, but a living, repentant Malcolm X, the prodigal son coming home. That's why Lewis X, his full statement was, such a man as Malcolm is worthy of death and would have met death if it were not for the Honorable Elijah Muhammad's faith in Allah. The messenger said, we cannot touch him because Allah is going to solve the Malcolm X matter, and solve it, the messenger dearly hoped, by bringing a repentant Malcolm X back. And a repentant Malcolm X was on his way, was trying to come back to his teacher. And he was killed. He was cut down before the prodigal son could return. And I suspect he was cut down in order to keep the prodigal son from returning to his father's house.
So who do you believe actually was behind the assassination of Malcolm X? Because you said that you don't you said that the nation had no involvement. I did see a video which I know you saw, and many others, of the Savior's Day 1993 piece where Minister Farrakhan was saying that if did you teach Malcolm, or did we teach Malcolm, and paraphrasing right now, and if we deal with a traitor the way a nation deals with a traitor, then what the hell business of it is yours? And I also saw him, apologizing on the Mike Wallace 60-minute piece when Batala, Malcolm's oldest daughter, Otis, was present. So I'm kind of trying to figure out, just for the sake of clarity, again, first and foremost, who do you believe carried out the assassination, who was behind it? And secondly, please explain, and I know that, to many members of the Nation of Islam, they may say, well, this has been explained, so on and so forth, but everybody listening to this program and platform hasn't had the opportunity to hear this particular side. So please.
I'm happy to do so. The murder of Malcolm X. I hold this up. This is 600 pages of notes for my upcoming book, The Real Judas Factor, Unraveling the Mystery of the Murder of Malcom X. I hold it up to make this point. We have a tremendous amount of data today. We can go a long way in forensically reconstructing the murder of Malcom X. And we can say with that data that the same assassination bureau that publicly executed President John F. Kennedy, November 22nd, 1963 in Dallas, that same assassination bureau assassinated Malcom X in Harlem, New York on February 21st, 1965. In fact, Harlem 1965 was in many ways an echo of Dallas 1963. The structure, the covert operations structure that executed their president, also their fingerprints are found all over the murder of Malcom X. And so the CIA they tried twice to assassinate Malcom X.
Now,
likely
you're talking about
with the assistance of the Israeli intelligence outfit Mossad.
now, are you talking about here in the States, or are you talking about internationally? Because we know that because we know the CIA is an international
right. So I said there were multiple attempts on Malcolm's life.
Right.
That's why I'm running.
Right. So at the Audubon Ballroom on February 21st, 1965, approximately 2 p.m. Who do you feel was behind that? Do you feel it was an international hit? Is that what you're saying to us? Or are you saying that, you know, and if
there
so,
were multiple agencies, as was the case with the public execution of President Kennedy. There were multiple agencies who pulled that trigger February 21st, 1965. The Office of Naval Intelligence, the CIA, the FBI, G2 of the U.S. Army. Herman Ferguson tells us, Herman Ferguson is one of Malcolm's followers, one of the most important witnesses.
I know Bob Herman Ferguson, I've interviewed him.
He tells us about the document that fell into his hands that indicated that there were 30 governmental agencies in the Audubon on that day. The FBI is a part of the conglomerate that targeted Malcolm. And the FBI had 9 informants in the Audubon on that day. Bossy, the Bureau of Special Services and Investigations, had 3 agents in the Audubon, but the CIA and 30 other government agencies had assets, armed assets in the Audubon on that day, because Malcolm's words are right. Not only was this hit bigger than the Nation of Islam, it was bigger than any one agency. We know the G2 of the Army was tracking and invested in Malcolm's demise. We know the Office of Naval Intelligence was invested in Malcolm's demise. So we have I'm going to hold this up. I'm going to sneak peek it. This is the who's who of the assassination operation that targeted and killed Malcom X, from the White House to the CIA to the FBI and Bossy. These are individuals whose fingerprints we can absolutely identify on the dead body of our brother Malcom X. So we have identified each agency's interconnecting role. So it's important that we don't oversimplify an inherently complex situation. The complexity should not scare us. The FBI absolutely played a critical role, but the assassination of Malcolm, he was such a threat. Multiple agencies colluded to kill him in the same way multiple agencies colluded to kill the President of the United States. Operationally, the New York hit of 1965 has upwards of 30 parallels to the presidential hit of Dallas of 1963. So the CIA, the FBI, Bossy, the Army's G2, Israeli Mossad, the Office of Naval Intelligence, all of them. And the green light, no doubt, was given by President Johnson, the White House. This hit goes all the way up, we are arguing, to the White House. And incidentally, it was Vice President Lyndon Johnson who green lighted the assassination of President Kennedy in 1963. And we are arguing that it was President Lyndon Johnson who green lighted the assassination of Malcom X in 1965.
Okay. So with that being said, we circle back around to Talmadge Hayer, right? So are we?
Who was the patsy?
Okay, so he would be the Oswald of the situation.
He's absolutely the Oswald. He's an Oswald and a Sirhan.
So
the Robert Kennedy assassination.
Right. So you saying that, and at that time you said he was on. You used the word
F time.
F time, and F time is what, for clarity?
You put out the nation. Malcolm, and that's important. People should understand the culture of the Nation of Islam in order to understand this Nation of Islam history. And Malcolm X is Nation of Islam history. Right. Malcolm, when he was suspended, he was put on C time. C time means you can still come among the community, but if you have a post, you can't serve in that post for the given time. In Malcolm's case, it was 90 days. So for 90 days, he could not mount the rostrum as minister of New York. For 90 days, he could not give any press conferences or any public speaking, but he could still come among the community. He can come to the mosque, any mosque event he could come to. F time is different. F time is you're removed from the community. You can't come among us for the given time, whether it's 90 days, a year, or 5 years. If your violation was so severe that you get F time, you cannot, the most Muslims cannot even communicate with you. The only thing we can do if we see you, if you give the greetings, we can return the greetings. If we do anything besides that, if we associate with anyone on F time, we will get put on F time. If I see you're on F time, you give me the greetings, I'm obliged to return the greetings, wa alaikum salam. If you follow that up with conversation with me, and I entertain your further conversation, I will incur your F time.
Okay. So
Talmadge Hayer had beat up a brother, FOI, and was put on F time. He was out of the mosque. He was isolated. He wasn't on C time. He was on F time.
Okay.
So he had no association with the community at that time.
Okay. And his comrades, were they on F time as well? Or what
Let's talk about, so they were the investigation, the reinvestigation of the New York District Attorney's Office, led by Cyrus Vance. The reinvestigation has found that the members named by Thomas Hagan in his affidavits, they were former members of the Nation of Islam at the time. They weren't current members. They were former members. In particular, probably the most important member of that hit team, and let's be real clear, the 5 shooters, they are Kill Team 2. Their job depended on the success of Kill Team 1 doing their job. And see, this is a problem. Nobody talks about Kill Team 1. Kill Team 1 came from Malcolm's own people. Kill Team 1, the Judas team, what I called them. Kill Team 1, 5 members. John 67X Warden, Earl 5X Grant, Reuben X Francis, John 57X Gray, and Langston 2X Savage. These were Malcolm's people. They were the Judas team around him. Kill Team 1 because they are the ones who stripped Malcolm of his security and made Kill Team 2's job, the shooter team, made their job easy. The only reason Kill Team 2, the shooter team, could get into the Audubon with their weapons and get to Malcolm X. Malcolm X standing naked on that stage, which is a violation of all our protocol and Malcolm's protocol. But the reason Kill Team 2, the shooter team, had such an easy task getting to Malcolm is because Kill Team 1, the Judas team, did their job. So the front rostrum guards, Robert 35X Smith and Charles 26X Blackwell. I have the FBI report that document that these were paid traitors to Malcolm X. When they rolled out of the way, giving the shooter team a clear, unobstructed shot at Malcolm, that was according to the plan. They were paid to do that. They got good money to do that. And why I insist on starting with Talmadge Hayer's 1966 confession is because he explicitly says that he and they were offered money to kill Malcolm. So these weren't just zealots, these were mercenaries.
Okay, they were expelled or put on F time, and they came out of what particular mosque?
So
is that the New Mosque?
So
I'm sorry?
New Mosque.
Okay.
Patterson, mosque number 74, Patterson, New Jersey, and mosque number 25 of Newark, New Jersey. Okay. Now the shotgun shooter, it's very important. William 25X Bradley. He shot the kill shot. The Netflix series, Who Killed Malcolm X? William 25X Bradley, the shotgun shooter, was the center of that series. But they don't give enough of the story. I agree that William 25X Bradley was the most important person of Kill Team 2, the shooter team, with the shotgun. He shot the kill shot. But this is very important. The FBI's file on William 25X Bradley. And so we know William 25X Bradley, the shotgun shooter, had this thick, heavy beard. Why? Because he was not an active member of the mosque at that time. He was out of the mosque. And he, just as Talmadge Hayer was put out of the mosque because he put hands on an FOI, Talmadge Hayer, when he was a lieutenant, June of 64, put hands on an FOI. And this came to Minister James Shabazz, and Minister James Shabazz determined he was wrong for doing so. He lost his post as lieutenant, and he was out of the mosque. That's why he had that full beard. Beards are proscribed in the Nation of Islam, meaning prohibited. The reason he was up in there with a shotgun and a full beard, because he wasn't up in there as an active FOI. But most importantly, William 25X Bradley was a federal asset. He was a Green Beret that was sheep dipped as a Muslim. He was a machine gunner trained by Green Berets, the special forces. Now, this is important. The CIA used the Green Berets as their uniformed mercenaries. The relationship between the Green Berets and the CIA goes back to before Kennedy. So the CIA would use Green Berets to commit the assassinations that their agents can't commit on foreign soil, but in particular in the States. William 25X Bradley was a Green Beret and honorably discharged from the military.
Was this known when he was led into the mosque as well?
I don't know.
Okay.
But he knew that, and his handlers knew that. We know that he was in the employ on February 21st, 1965. He was in the employ of the NYPD, but really the FBI. We know that because of the extremely important testimony of Roland Shepard, who was at the Audubon on that day. And when he was questioned by the NYPD in the Harlem precinct, Roland Shepard saw the assassination. He saw the shotgun shoot. When he was questioned by the NYPD, he went to the Harlem precinct. While being questioned, he saw the shooter in the precinct going into an office as if it was his own office. Later, when William Bradley or Al-Mustafa Shabazz, when his face in 2020 was publicized, John Judge of the Committee of Political Assassinations sent Roland Shepard the picture of Al-Mustafa Shabazz, formerly William 25X Bradley. John Judge sent that picture to Roland Shepard, and Roland Shepard confirms that's the one I saw both at the Audubon with the shotgun, and that's the one I saw at the New York City Police Station, acting as if he has an office there. Now we know that he infiltrated the Newark Mosque. This report is from the Newark office. William Bradley likely operated out of the New York FBI office. The reason, we can show that the reason Leon Forex Amir was killed It was to protect the identity of this asset, William 25X Bradley. Leon Amir, at the funeral of Malcolm, in conversation with persons from Newark who are at the Audubon, who saw the shooter, they gave that information to Leon Amir. Leon Amir tried to sell that information to the FBI, and then the FBI files a conversation between the Boston FBI office, the Newark FBI office, and the New York FBI office. We know that Bradley likely worked out of the New York office, was an asset, used as an asset in the Newark mosque, and his shooting on February 21st was not on behalf of Temple number 25. It was on behalf of his intelligence handlers out of New York.
So so there seems to have been several operatives and handlers, you know, a few that you said were suspended, right? Mm-hmm. So that's not that wasn't a rarity. So it is when they talk about the FBI had you know, things wired and all of that, it was fairly easy because there were members inside of the nation, correct?
I don't understand your question. Say that
okay,
again.
I'm asking you. You said that you named a couple different folks as operatives working with the FBI and also working with the U.S. military, CIA, Mossad, etc. Mm-hmm. So there seems to be. It was when you talk about there were FBI, I mean, there were wiretaps and all that type of stuff. It was fairly easy because of these operatives, correct?
What was easy?
To wiretap? Yes.
Well, yeah, it was, but not because of necessarily because of informants in the mosque. J. Edgar Hoover's apparatus.
Right, absolutely. But I'm just saying, if
I have the palace itself,
you saying he did it, J. Edgar?
Yeah, under his direction, the palace itself was fully, the messenger of God's home was fully wired and bugged. So I don't know if I'm.
And I'm asking this because of the fact that I know that with John Ali in particular, you know, he had one of the highest ranking positions within the nation. And, you know, you identified him as an operative. So I said it would be fairly easy if this particular gentleman is
William 25X Bradley.
No, I'm still talking about John Ali, but William 25X Bradley, that's another situation. So I'm just saying it was fairly easy to
infiltrate the Nation of Islam.
Absolutely.
Well, absolutely.
Right.
It is easy because of how we do. You can come. Any black person, this message is for every black person. There is no sin of the white man, of Satan, that you or I committed that bars us from entry into the hospital. There is no crime that you or I committed that cuts us off from the possibility of salvation from this message of truth. So because our doors are open to all black people, the government knew that they can send their operatives there. And many of them, having come, hearing the word, were transformed by the word. Others came with the government's agenda, and they maintained the government's agenda to the end.
Was Malcolm awarded the same?
Islam is not different than every other black organization that was the victim of COINTELPRO.
Right. So was Malcolm awarded that same opportunity I know you said it started off with him being 90 days, then things got hot in June. Was that, but then there were folks talking about, wanting to take his life, so on and so forth. So was he exempt from that? Or
exempt from what?
From returning or attending the mosque? I mean, based on what was being said.
Well, two different things. Malcolm was negotiating a return to the mosque when he was killed.
Okay.
So I hope that answers the question, but that's not directly related to the point that I just made.
Okay. So
Malcolm Little, let me make the point. Detroit Red absolutely was afforded the opportunity that I just spoke of. There was nothing that Malcolm Little, as Detroit Red, as Satan, as Malcolm Little, there was nothing that he did that barred him from the Nation of Islam. That's why he, from prison, could be touched by the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and coming out of prison, he could be baptized by the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad. He is an example of precisely what I'm talking about. There is no crime that Malcolm committed that made us reject him or any thousands of Malcolm Littles and Detroit Reds. Now, when Malcolm was taught by the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad for 12 years, Malcolm had the freedom to choose to leave his teacher. And when he left, didn't nobody go running behind him to kill him because he left. I know the James 67X Warden narrative. We can talk about that. That's a false narrative. I document that. But it wasn't him. He had the freedom to leave. He had the freedom to leave in March. He did not have the freedom to do what he was doing in June, though he did have the freedom because the Honorable Elijah Muhammad intervened and gave him the freedom to scandalize his teacher unmercifully and unjustifiably. But the Honorable Elijah Muhammad was not bothered by Malcolm. He wanted Malcolm to come back home, and Malcolm wanted to come back home. And negotiations were afoot for Malcolm to come back home. So I think, so to answer your question, there was nothing Malcolm X said or did in June that made it impossible from the Honorable Elijah Muhammad's perspective from repenting and coming back home. He wanted that, and Malcolm wanted that, but the government was not going to allow that to happen.
Right. And I mean, partially because there were members of the government inside of the camp as well.
That is correct.
Okay. So I want to touch on a couple more questions and before we close out, because I don't want to take up all your time.
But you mentioned the minister's 1992.
Yes, 93, correct? 93 saviors there? Or was that 92?
93. I would like to address those because they figure prominently in the mischievous false narrative.
Right. Well, I also, along with that, I would like you to touch on, because you mentioned me not completing that initial statement in regards to the piece from the December 4th, was it 64? The 64 comment. But you didn't address the first part of it. And the first part of it was the die is set and Malcolm shall not escape, especially after such evil, foolish talk. You addressed the second half of it, but I want you to touch on that as well, if you don't mind.
The die was set. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad's consistent message, privately and publicly, was Allah was going to handle the Malcom X matter. It was not for the FOI to handle the Malcom X matter. He was very consistent very clear. So we had to stand down. The only thing we could do was fight Malcolm with our words in our newspaper. That's the only thing we could do. We are enraged, and justifiably so. We don't apologize then or now for the feelings, and I want to quote the minister.
Yeah, because he did apologize.
He gives context to his words. Let me read, and what I'm about to quote. He says in that exact same 1992, 1993, part 2, Sages Day Part 2, which is like a 3-4 hour lecture. You should listen to the whole thing. The comment that's ripped out of context. If hypothetical, if we dealt with the traitor, our traitor, the way America deals with her traitors, what business is it of yours? He was making a particular point in context of what he was saying. That was a hypothetical. And the principle is right. Because Malcolm X that everybody loves is Minister Malcolm X, the hard Malcolm X. For 12 years, the Malcolm X that was birthed in the womb of the Nation of Islam, developed on and in. You quoted Ozzie Davis, our black shining prince, our living manhood. He got manhood training in the FOI class of the Nation of Islam when the coroners who operated on Malcolm, when they said that his Malcolm X's insides were the cleanest insides they had ever seen, that wasn't a consequence of Malcolm being Malcolm. That was a consequence of Malcolm being born and shaped and raised in the way of the Nation of Islam. So the Malcolm that everyone loves is not the Malcolm that left the nation for less than 365 days, who had multiple evolving and shifting opinions. It was the Malcolm of the Nation of Islam. So the minister said, who gave you Malcolm X? That was ours. That was ours. And so we were engaged in a situation with our man. And if we had dealt with our traitor the way America deals with her traitors, what business is it of yours? That was his point, and it's a right point. But this is what he said. You need to hear this. He said in that same lecture, he said, quote, Malcolm dogged the messenger, the man who took him from a pimp, from a hustler, from a stick-up man, and sent him before the world. Now he's dogging his teacher. What do you think we felt? Elijah Muhammad wasn't just a leader. That's our spiritual guide and father, brother. You don't have to order me to kill you. If you attack my father, my orders come from my love. I want you to hear me good, because every Muslim that loved Elijah Muhammad would have killed Malcolm if we had gotten a chance. We didn't incite that. Malcolm incited that in us. He would have never lasted a year. But Elijah Muhammad told us, leave him alone. He told me to my face, leave him alone. And I am an obedient servant. That's what he said in that same lecture. And that is what undergirds his comments in the Muhammad Speaks of December 4th. Yes, from our perspective, Malcolm's dogging his teacher after 12 years of benefiting, being blessed by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, more so than the Honorable Elijah Muhammad's own son.
So for the record, for the people that's listening, so no one would draw any conclusions outside of what's coming from Dr. Wesley Muhammad on March 8th, 2022 on Riot Starter TV. For the record, what was considered dogging out the messenger that made him worthy of death, that folks would have wanted to take his life?
Because
if you could.
Malcolm knew and understood the truth of the domestic life of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad. He knew that he was not only was he falsely presenting the Honorable Elijah Muhammad's domestic life as a matter of teenage secretaries, when all of his wives were 20 and plus when they bore the Honorable Elijah Muhammad children. He knew that his presentation of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad's domestic life was wrong, and he went with great energy to the white press to begging them to take the salacious story and print it. When the press said, no, we can't print that story unless you get the women to file a paternity suit against him, get a bastardy charge against them. And because he was so desperate to get the white press to print this false and salacious story about his benefactor, he went to sisters and told them that if you do not file this bastardy charge, not only will I get killed by the Muslims, you would get killed by the Muslims. Malcolm obtained the attorney, the white lady, Gladys Root, I believe her name, to file the charges.
You're talking about the paternity suits?
The paternity suits. All of this and the women, and we have those women testifying to what Malcolm told them to get them to do what they did not want to do. All of the records are clear. They absolutely did not want to do what Malcolm was begging them to do. And this is why he twisted their mind, put fear in them, trying to get them.
Yeah, because you keep saying the white press. And again, John Ali going to the press to announce his that didn't count when he said that Malcolm was being expelled.
If that happened, yes, but I told you.
I mean, we saw video footage of it.
Excuse.
Right. No, I'm saying not if it happened. I'm saying
wrong is wrong.
Yeah, I'm saying based on the video. This happened prior to it, right?
Yeah, no.
Okay.
You never heard me excuse John Ali.
I'm not accusing you of excusing him. Right.
John Ali. And so as much as I'm not going to excuse John Ali, I can't excuse Malcolm when Malcolm is wrong. And in this case, he was wrong.
Okay.
And Malcolm, this is important. When Malcolm first dropped that heavy burden on his young student, Minister Louis X, this is the night Malcolm was suspended and was disallowed from teaching at Mosque number 7. Boston Minister Louis X was brought in to speak in his stead. It was Malcolm that picked Louis up from the airport and took him back to the airport.
And he was a student of Malcolm's, correct?
Student of
Mr. Farrakhan.
A follower of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad.
Right. But Malcolm was his teacher, correct?
Malcolm was his teacher.
Okay, I just want clarity.
And it was then that Malcolm told Minister Lewis about the domestic life of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And Malcolm said to Lewis, if you don't believe me, I can get the sisters on the phone and trick them into confessing who the father of their children is. We got those sisters confirming exactly what the Honorable Miss Louis Farrakhan shares of that conversation. He said, I will trick them into confessing on the phone. The minister said, you don't have to do that. Farrakhan Minister Louis X goes back to Boston that night. His head messed up. That morning, he gets up for Fajr prayer, 5 a.m. He opens his Quran. And the Quran opens to the chapter dealing with the wives of Prophet Muhammad. Prophet Muhammad had 9 wives, as did the most honorable Elijah Muhammad. Minister Lewis calls Malcolm and says he's found it. He has the answer. Minister Lewis flies into New York. He shares with Malcolm what he found of the Quran. Listen to what Malcolm tells his student. What his student found was that the domestic life of their teacher, the most honorable Elijah Muhammad, is in complete congruency, complete accord with the domestic life of Prophet Muhammad himself. When Minister Louis X shares this with Malcolm, Malcolm says, I already know that. He says, you leave that alone. You can't handle that. Let me handle that.
And this is
Malcolm was well aware and appreciative of the reality of his teacher's domestic life. He knew it wasn't dirty, but when he presented it publicly, he dirtied it. And that angered us. And so, but despite our anger, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad forbade us from touching Malcolm because the Honorable Elijah Muhammad made it clear a living, repentant Malcolm would be much greater for the cause of Islam than a dead, martyred Malcolm. He didn't want that. And he did not order that.
Okay. Now, I have a couple more questions, and if you would like any closing words, then I welcome you to it. One of the things, a question, that's come up, and I know that Minister Farrakhan had apologized for words that may have contributed to Malcolm's death, and he said that it was black men that pulled the trigger. Correct? That's what he said on.
He apologized for contributing to the climate,
right,
in which the enemy could enter.
Okay.
And kill Malcolm. Okay,
so this what he was telling Mike Wallace on 60 Minutes during the piece with Atala. So you're saying, okay, so the climate was set, but the nation had nothing to do with it. Is what would be your final thoughts on that?
The nation as an organization did not murder Malcolm X.
It would be
the
former
shooters
members
of Malcolm were not operating under the orders of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. They were operating off of the instruction and payment. They were mercenaries, paid and trained by the intelligence apparatus of the United States government. We had death in our heart for Malcolm because Malcolm inspired that in us at a certain point. We don't deny that. We don't even apologize for that. We do apologize, as the Honorable Brother Minister Farrakhan did apologize for allowing our righteous indignation to be manipulated. Okay. Manipulated in the sense that the atmosphere that was created was what permitted the false flag operation to be successful. The Malcom X hit was a false flag operation.
Now, explain the false flag operation in regards to this, because I mean, it actually happened. We know that Malcolm's gone. Usually, false flag is something that, I mean,
no, sir.
Explain that.
No, sir. That's not a false flag operation. Happens. People are killed. What makes it a false flag is the terrorists are government operatives, but they wear the uniform. They pose as a rebel group.
Right.
And commit the terrorist act in the name or under the flag of the terrorist group. It's called a pseudo team.
Right.
The murder of Malcolm X, the killers, that was a pseudo team. They weren't operating.
Former members, they're former members turned
current government operatives.
Former members, current government operatives.
Right. And they were acting not on behalf of their former membership.
Right.
They were acting
on behalf of the government.
The handling of their current association with the Assassination Bureau of the United States government. It was a false flag. These were government assets posing as zealous Muslims who killed Malcolm X. Right. So
you initially came on to respond to the interview we did with Baba Zak. I know that in the past, I've heard that Baba Zak Kondo and other scholars, have made efforts to interview the minister. Do you think,
I lost you, brother Kalonji.
Oh, no.
I'm sorry, I lost you. The last 2 or 3 seconds, you froze. So
it's all good, man. That's probably
so. The last thing I heard was efforts were made to interview the Honorable Mr. Louis Farrakhan. I didn't hear anything after that.
Right. Okay. Cool. So my question, you being on the executive council, do you think that the minister will be open to being interviewed by the Zak Kondos and the Paul Lees of this world?
Yeah. So the minister has given numerous interviews. He gave Manny Marable, 9 hours of interview. I'm suspicious of people who claim they tried. Now, I don't know. You mentioned Brother Zak Kondo and Brother Paul Lee. I don't know if you mentioned them because they said to you or said, they said to someone else that they in particular tried to interview the minister. The minister denied. I don't know that.
I spoke to Baba Zak and he said so, but I didn't say.
I don't know.
Yeah, I didn't speak to Paul Lee in regards to that.
I know the minister has interviewed Black scholars, white scholars, Gardel, in the name of Elijah Muhammad. The minister has interviewed with the Black, giving interviews on this matter to the Black press, to the white press. So if for someone to say they officially sought an interview with the Honorable Brother Minister Farrakhan and it was unsuccessful, I don't know why. That's not. I don't know anything about.
Let me not put any words in anyone's mouth.
Okay.
I'm asking you for clarity on question. Do you think, knowing the minister, that he would be open to interview or sit down with Baba Zak Kondo? Is what I'm asking.
Well, I don't know why he would today. I'm gonna be totally frank. I would like to sit down with Baba Zak Kondo.
Okay.
I wish you. Did you tune in to the Swan song?
I didn't get a chance to. No,
that the Honorable Brother Minister Farrakhan sung for us last Sunday, Savior's Day?
No.
The Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan has not only opened himself up by giving testimony after testimony after testimony about this matter, he has availed himself to anyone who would seek his perspective on the matter. Now, after 44 years absent his father, you know, brother, I've watched and listened to a lot of brother Zak Kondo. I've consumed a tremendous number of his words. I don't suspect that the Honorable Brother Minister Farrakhan over these 44 years would have been adverse to dialoguing with Zak Kondo. But to come now, after decades of indicting the nation and twisting in a way that violates scholarly integrity, that was, I'm sorry, but that was the point of the piece that I published. When I said Brother Zak Kondo is wrong, I don't just say it. I know you can't just say something like that. You have to document it. So I put out, this is an excerpt from my book. It's called Compromised Credibility. Zak Kondo on the Assassination of Malcom X. And in here, I cite only 3 examples, but I have many more in here in which Zak Kondo twists words, does violence to witness testimony in order to make his case that is unmakeable on its own merits, his case that the Nation of Islam, upon the orders of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, murdered Malcolm. He has no authentic evidence of that. So he fabricates evidence he has by twisting testimony. And so, I don't know why in the past, I don't know that, and you aren't saying that you know, Brother Zak Kondo made an outreach to the Honorable Brother Minister Farrakhan, and that outreach was rejected. I don't know why it would be then, but now, 44 years later, I'm not going to speak for him, but I'm going to say this. You don't get any traction in that regard coming out talking about Farrakhan need to come clean. Farrakhan ain't never been dirty in this matter. Never. Farrakhan has been transparent from 1979 through 93. There's multiple full testimonies that he gave. He has never been quiet. He has never been dirty. So to say Farrakhan need to come clean, well, we're here to clean that up. Farrakhan ain't never been dirty. He don't need to come clean.
Right. Well, I will definitely speak to Baba Zak, and if it's all possible, that we could do a sit down. I would definitely open up Riot Starter TV platform and Black Power Media to make that happen if that's something that that he would wish to do. I don't speak for Baba Zak, nor do I speak for the Nation of Islam. I'm here in the capacity of a journalist here at Riot Starter TV and Black Power Media. Something that I do part-time. I'd rather be fighting for freedom, but we
do it very well.
Well, I appreciate that. I appreciate
your spirit. I appreciate your questions. I pray that Allah blesses you with escalating success in your work. Kalonji.
Back at you. Is there any closing words you want to leave the people with? And
yes.
Like I said, we definitely appreciate you coming on and sharing your thoughts and representing in the best manner you could.
I pray that we have contributed to the clarity that was sought at the beginning. No one show can give full clarity, but the conversation, if it's honest and welcoming to all perspectives that have some relationship to this matter in this history, that conversation ultimately, I believe, will lead us to clarity and to healing. My last words would only be to your great audience. I would invite you to tune in this Sunday and every Sunday and hear from us. Tune in to NOI.org/webcast. Don't just hear about us, hear from us. If there is a mosque or a study group in your city, check us out. The Malcom X false narrative, the autobiography of Malcolm X, led you to us. The false narrative led you away from us. We are saying that get around as we are deconstructing that false narrative. You have no reason. You cannot use the Malcolm X false narrative as an excuse to stay estranged from your family. We are your family. We love you. Farrakhan's love for Black people is God's love for Black people. And we who try to emulate him also have that love for Black people. So tune in this Sunday, NOI.org/webcast.
Right on. We appreciate you. And again, we thank you for coming on, Dr. Wesley Muhammad. And I'm sure we'll be hearing more from you and Dr. Kondo and other folks out here on this particular topic. And I would like to invite all of your viewers, folks who tapped in tonight, to be sure to subscribe to Black Power Media. This is our platform. We have over 12 different podcasts on this network. We have a morning show, the Remix Morning Show, in which we broadcast live every Tuesday through Thursday from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. EST, Eastern Standard Time. Also in the Riot Starter TV archives, we have plenty of interviews with a whole lot of heavy hitters. So we welcome you to come back and check us out. Dr. Wesley Muhammad, again, we thank you for your time tonight. And, we hope that, the truth about the assassination of El-Hajj Malik Shabazz, Malcolm X, is brought to light. And, and anything that is dark, we pray that comes to light as well.
Amen.
Thank you again for joining us.
Thank you.
You're checking out the Riot Starter TV live on Black Power Media. This was an interview with Dr. Wesley Muhammad. Feel free to share this interview because we think it's important for folks to hear what it is that that the people have to say. There's two other interviews you could check out in case you missed it. One was the one that Dr. Wesley Muhammad was referring to in regards to Baba Zak Kondo. Also, check out the interview that was done a couple months ago, which was with Paul Lee and Peter Goldman. You can go to our website, which is blackpowermedia.org, and tap in. Go to Riot Starter TV if you want to catch those particular interviews. But definitely we appreciate you all checking us out tonight. Be strong, stay on point, stay ready for revolution. Black Power Media, we out.